Welcome to the Universal Dancer Podcast with your host Leslie Zehr, author of The Alchemy of Dance and the Alchemia Remedies. Coming to you live from Cairo, Egypt, the ancient land of Kem. Journey with us to explore sacred dance, the sacred arts, the mystical and the magical. Join a community of like-minded souls seeking to understand the cosmic dance of co-creation through the sacred arts. Come along and expand your mind, ignite your creativity, and explore something new and something old.
Welcome to the podcast. So this is going to be the last episode of this year. And it's been a beautiful journey. And we have one more guest for you. So I'm excited to introduce you to her. So please grab a cup of tea and just relax. And we'll get into conversation. So I'm going to introduce her to you, Brietta Leader.
Brietta Leader is a teacher of dance in its many forms of healing, prayer, play, and conditioning. She grew up as a dancer and discovered her path as a healing artist in 2001 while traveling in Asia. The combination of Brietta's devotion to the dance, her gypsy spirit, family roots, and passion to support herself and others into an embodied conscious awakening has birthed her own trademark movement form called WildCore. Her years of study as a conscious dance leader and mentor for soul motion began to blend with 15 years as a Nia teacher, massage therapist, shamanic student, devoted yogi, pranic healer, Reiki practitioner, apprentice to Mother Nature, energy enthusiast, and performer, all of which contributed to WildCore's development. Brietta loves to inspire self-healing through movement and offers classes, workshops, and co-creative retreats and performances to her hometown of Sandpoint, Idaho, surrounding areas, and internationally. Let's welcome Brietta to the show.
Hi, Brietta. I apologize for mispronouncing your name. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Leslie. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
Thank you for being here. I know it's very early where you are, so I appreciate your getting up and being with us so early in the morning. That's too early for me. Maybe you're a morning person, but I'm not sure I could do that. So I very much appreciate you being here. So I just want to begin at the beginning, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you first started with dance. What was your introduction to dance?
I started as a little girl. I grew up in a really small northern Idaho town, and I would travel to actually the town I live now as a youngster, and ballet, traditional dance classes, and I just continued that path all the way through college and performing. One of my friends had mentioned this summer about looking into what you do between your ages of 8 and 12 kind of informs the rest of your life. And when I was reflecting on what that was, it was bossing my little cousins around, creating dance performances, getting in costumes. And so it has just been that thread through my whole life. And later, I didn't actually graduate with a degree in dance per se. It was more of an emphasis at University of Idaho. And I got into being out in the woods with at-risk youth. So I was a guide for several years, and I craved dance. I wanted to get back into it, and I wasn't quite sure how, because I know, sure, you can live in a big city and try for being in a, just being in a bigger studio, being in a whole troupe, but that wasn't really for me. I really love living in the mountains in a smaller place. So I had been introduced to Nia and soul motion at that point, and that's kind of when it started. I know in my little bio intro, it talks about going to Asia and just really having this transformational point in my life, which it was a huge shift. I started studying Thai massage in Thailand, and I ended up going to this huge spiritual gathering called the Maha Kumbh Mela in India, and it just, everything opened. And so when I returned, I realized, okay, it's time to start bringing in dance again. And that's when I started the more of the healing artist path, and just have continued. I'm constantly learning, teaching, guiding others. Really, I feel like WildCore was born here in this yurt. I'd had many times of being in different studios here in town, and at one point I was exclusively here in the yurt, and so there's no mirrors, you're dancing in a circle. And that's when I really felt a different languaging coming through, a different energy. We were really connecting into what I feel is that ancient art of dance.
That's beautiful. So you were studying things like, well, you were a teacher, soul motion and Nia teacher, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so what is WildCore? Like, describe to us what the elements are. Yeah, or how you might do it.
Well, it actually is really based on the actual elements of earth, water, fire, air, and space, due to what I just touched on briefly of all that time in Mother Nature out in the wild, just feeling her fierceness, her gentleness, and also how she teaches others, especially with kids who had no skills really even at home, let alone out in the woods, just how they would be taught. And I was just kind of the space holder. I didn't know it at the time. This is all reflecting back because I was in my 20s. I was just hanging on by a thread, more or less.
You were
so that
doing.
Actually, yeah, I was just like, oh my God, these kids are, I really learned a lot. But what I discovered as a Nia teacher and as a soul motion teacher, and I did that 15 plus years, very devoted, almost daily. And I just really loved the choreography. And I think that stems back to my training growing up with actual, modern and jazz and ballet. And I just love all that creativity of blending different movements together and finding that flow and that connection to breath, also bringing in strong threads, but also that piece of the conscious dance, just letting people go free and feeling held within a sacred container. I really love that too, along with different yoga postures, different breath work, and that sense of belonging, which really came here, especially in this circle type feeling in the yurt, the container of the yurt. So, or just a circle in general. So essentially it blends choreography with conscious dance, breath work, and belonging. And I just started to blend every single thing I loved in a class into one class, and that's the condensed version. If you were to do a 1 hour class with me, that's what it would look like. And then, if it's more of a workshop sense, there's more of a journey. Sometimes I'm not even really leading much choreography, but the playlist is set up in a way where I can just gently guide you on this whole movement journey. So I just allow really that healing artist to emerge. And I also have a WildCore teacher training too, and we can talk about that later if you'd like.
So well, why don't you just explain what your interpretation of conscious dance is? I think a lot of people think they know what conscious dance is, but it's always good to, just explain where you're coming from when you say that.
Sure. I feel like when I use that term conscious dance, it's that point of really being connected to what you're feeling in your body, the sensations that are coming through, those intuitive impulses. You're held in this sacred space. So there might be closed eyes or soft eyes. You're going inward. There's nothing necessarily being super led about right arm here, left arm there. There's something like that. And what I like to do is really tap into that possibility of going a little deeper into their whole intelligent system of the body, going a little closer to that deep wild core place. And that's also a part of the inspiration for the name of my movement form, is to really tap into that inner wild, that inner wilderness, and explore. We have points, just like when we're in the woods, we might have our favorite trails. We have these favorite forests, these things that we really know on the inside of us. But then actually there's hidden caves and there's national parks and there's these different things that I like to use metaphor a ton when I dance with WildCore. And I think that allows a little more lightness for people to explore deep things or sensations, emotions, things that come up as you move, and then reflect back with how is the natural world reflecting that back to you, or how can you see yourself in it. So that's a little bit of a longer explanation of the conscious dance, but it's tapping into that untamed freedom part of yourself in a sacred container.
But you also incorporate choreography, yes?
Yes.
So what kind of choreography, or what's the difference? Why are you using choreography as opposed to like free dance, or what does that bring?
Well, I did notice, having been a dancer and witnessed a lot of dances through slow motion or whatever it may be, is I noticed people accessing just a portion of their body, and that's fine. They're totally in their groove and they may be doing that for a week. And I had the experience to do a lot of different things. I had done a lot of different performing arts, all these different influences to move my body in different ways. And that just got me that much more inspired to support people in accessing more of their body, to condition it the right way through alignment, through freedom, through connecting to their watery selves. I just feel like the choreography that comes through me it's a blend completely. Like there might be a belly dance move, it might be a very African dance type move, might be very jazzy at moments, might be very ballet. Sometimes I throw in fifth position and a lot of second position. So I'm really infusing all these different forms that I've either seen or felt in myself, and supporting people in, it's kind of that rhythmic repetition. Yesterday, I was calling it a ritual repetition. So we're staying in what I call a movement mudra. Say there's 4 different moves, and we repeat it over and over. So you can start to feel it with the breath. You can start to feel the element maybe within, or anything that I'm actually really guiding you to inquire with. But it doesn't become super heady of like, oh my gosh, what is she doing next? I want it to be comfortable where people can really sink into the movement mudra, or the phrase of movement that is choreographed.
So you as the leader of, or the facilitator, are spontaneously coming up with the choreography, or there's specific choreography that maybe you do in every class?
Yeah, I have routines that I've choreographed, and then, with real specific movements that I do allow for flexibility, of course, in the moment, in the particular thread or focus that I'm bringing in for that class. It might shift and change. It's not a very rigid style of choreographing. And I also invite students too. It's like, here's an opportunity to do some of this choreography. It's really good for your brain, activating a lot of cross brain patterning. I call it brain food, because we do need that stimulation to get those synapses firing, especially in a time when there's a lot of, just people are struggling trying with Alzheimer's or dementia. It's a real thing. And it's good for us to keep everything firing and connecting your mind and your body, your heart. And so I feel like it's a really important part. In addition, you can condition your body. So when you're out skiing or on a hike, or you're about to fall, you have these resources, you have this source of your core connection to support you and not get hurt.
Yeah, I had never thought about choreography that way. You've planted a seed in my head. I'll have to think about this more. But like that concept of stretching yourself a little bit, or going into places that maybe you wouldn't, because most of my dance is not choreographed in the sense that like it's downloaded. But yes, if you had somebody else's input, they would take you in a completely different direction, possibly, that you might not go on your own. And I think it is important to experience things that are not familiar to you. So that's an interesting thing to use choreography in that way, to expand somebody's boundaries maybe, or horizons, or however you would think about that. I'm going to
And
have
I
to
do
sit with
have,
that.
yeah, I'm glad that there was a little spark there. And I just
Yeah.
wanted to say there's definitely students that come that are just completely comfortable with choreography. In fact, they would rather not have any
Exactly.
free dance. And then the opposite, some that would rather just be free and they don't want any instruction at all. And so it does, but it attracts them in that way because they do feel just a little of that challenge and a little of that push. And then they start to, if they're open, available and being available to spark something new, a new way of moving and educating. There's a lot of education in WildCore as well, of just whatever I happen to be studying right then is going to be infused.
That's good.
In addition to
Again,
the many years.
broaden their horizons. Yeah. Yeah, because I think I had sort of an aversion to choreography in that I wanted people to be creative. And there are a lot of women that would come to my classes. A lot of students wanted choreography, and I felt that they wanted it like to feel safe, which is fine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to suggest something that might make them feel safe. But now I see there's a whole other side of it, that's not the safety, but maybe you taking them by the hand into a new place that they hadn't gone before. So because I love to do just improvisational, or like I said, this kind of downloading thing, and to allow spirit to move you. But yes, I see that everybody else doesn't, or maybe doesn't exactly know how to make that connection. And maybe that's another way to help them, is with choreography, to take them by the hand and say, well, you could do this or you could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does, because I do feel that same way, of that download and that, and that opening your channel or the whole vessel of your body. And, even just a simple movement, vertical, reaching out from the heart, whatever it happens to be, opening and closing the body, can be enough. And then they can just take it from there. And then they start to feel comfortable. They start to feel their bodies warmed up. And like I said, sometimes my classes are way less choreographed and just, there's just these tiny little frameworks. Because if a person comes into a class and they want to start to move their body and get familiar, but they don't have any base of any dance at all, or any real structure of movement, they're kind of a deer in the headlights, honestly. They're just like, I don't know where to
Yes.
go. I don't know what to do.
They're lost. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, and that's one of the roles of the facilitator, is just to be with them, I suppose, and make them feel comfortable to find their way to express themselves.
Yeah, and so much has to do with expression. And so I think that's why I love to have different styles of music from all over the world, to stimulate different parts within ourselves, like just ancient parts of ourselves, connected to modern parts
Yes.
too.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about dance as an ancient healing art. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I've been involved in Northwest Yoga Feast for many years. We didn't have it the last couple, but I've had this dynamic, I would say, I love yoga as my own personal practice, and I'm actually in a teacher training right now with Shiva Ray, and I'm loving it, which is helping me evolve my point of view. But I would always just want them to realize that we danced first. Around the fire, when there was a drum, we danced. And this is as old as our very first ancient ancestor. And that primal medicine, that deep power that's in all of our DNA, no matter who we are, I feel, this is my point of view, obviously, and is in there. And so I really love to spark that in people and remind them that they're part of that lineage. And that to me just is so exciting. And I feel a huge devotion to that ancient form. Obviously, depending on what culture you come from and what your background is or what you really connect with, there's storytelling within the dance. There's all these different ways that dance has been interpreted over the years, the thousands and thousands of years. And that's also exciting to me too. It's just, we're connecting to something so ancient and so primal and within us that I'm a strong believer that everyone can dance, even if it's just this little pulse. And you see it in shows, like a lot of men do the super good head bob. But then not a lot of their whole body is moving, but their head is. So
the rhythm.
The rhythm's there. They got it a little bit. I'm always like, come on, guys, drop down a little into those feet. But that's a whole other topic. And so when I'm in my classes and I'm, teaching teachers, for example, is just opening that channel, that the roots. I mean, it really is just like extremely deep roots. And yoga too has extremely deep roots, 4,000 or 5,000 years old. And there's so much power in that and so much that we can connect with and support ourselves in these modern times to uplift, keep the vibrations high, keep ourselves moving and sourcing from that place of love.
Some wise person, who I can't remember who it is at the moment, said that dance was our first religion. And I thought that was really interesting, because that was the way that people prayed or expressed themselves or connected to the divine. So, and you see it in children. Mm-hmm. They come in that way. As soon as they can stand up, they start moving. They start moving to music. And so obviously it's in our DNA. It's in the fields, however you want to put it. But I think it's sad that we lost that. That's what I feel, that it is ancient, and it's something that was such a huge part of our lives. I mean, people used to dance in the caves, and for eons people have been dancing, and then it got lost or just minimized to going to a discotheque, or is that what people call it? A club, okay. I'm dating myself here. When it used to be a discotheque. Yeah, going to a club, that it has to be, which is a different ritual, but it used to be so much a part of our daily lives. And I think it's really sad that we lost that. And I think as human beings, we sort of alienated ourselves from our bodies by losing that. That was so much a part of us that, that we need it. We need to make that connection.
Yeah, and I know there's many of us out there bringing it back, and many people starting to connect to the fact like, oh, actually, I think I do need to do this in some level. And it has been one of my missions, in addition to WildCore, is having a performing group. I did it. I still have one here. We've been together 14 years. We're called Gypsy Divas. And then I had one in Alaska when I lived there, and we did more of candle dance. At one point I had up to 21 women in the troupe, which was a little too many, but I've always said that dance troupes are a spiritual practice when you're working with the dynamics of 10 plus women, and that it's great. I mean, it's powerful, but the point is I feel like I have these moments, and maybe it's one of my missions, is to remind people of what we're talking about, whether they're either dancing themselves or seeing it as a performance. And so this winter, for winter solstice, we're going to celebrate a little early on the full moon of December 18th. My troupe we're going to dress all in furs. Actually, today in the yurt, we're going to make it a big mess in here, fake fur, just making a costume. And we have these orbs that sometimes are with candles, but it's much easier with little fairy lights because we can move them around without them going out. And we're going to do a dance along with some other women that are going to do some tribal belly dance, and just bring it to the community. It's a free event. I got sponsorships, live music. There's a DJ. It's like a whole event for celebration and gathering. And there's a spot in town where we can do this, and they have a lot of things over the years, but they have been a little dormant. So it feels really good to bring it back. And anyone I asked to be a part of it, they were like, yes. I mean,
we need this. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't, and you're sometimes like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? This is like the darkest days of the year. We all want to be inside. But I literally had this unstoppable energy, like this is happening. So I needed all those yeses to continue my path. Yeah. But the point is just I really feel strong dedication to the ancient art of dance in both of those realms, performing and then as a teacher, and just let the little kids see the performances. It's not a big deal. It's just a part of us is kind of the message.
Yes, I think it needs to become the norm again. And doing ritual, the solstice, the equinox, whatever it is, I think this is to get back to that concept of, the turning wheel and what these things are, because I think a lot of young people don't. We do ritual on the full and the dark moon. It's important. It's important to know just something as simple as that, to know where the moon is. And so many people are disconnected. So if you can make it a fun event or something, just to inform people, to make them realize, to make that normality again, that we celebrate these. They're not ancient rituals, because obviously it's still part of our lives. We still have the equinox and the solstice. It's still the same things are happening, but the celebration doesn't seem to be there. And we need more celebration. I think this is great that you're doing that, because we do. We need to celebrate these things.
Yeah, there's these rhythms and cycles that we all have, whether we're paying attention to them or not. And it goes with what you're saying. It's just the more we start to pay attention to the moon cycles and how we feel within them, just easier. I mean, life just becomes more rhythmic, and we're more in tune with what we really want and what our body's telling us. And we're not overriding our system, which in turn can help us maybe stop or damper down the overriding of the earth, and just doing and taking and stripping things that are happening continually. And it's one of those things. I mean, it's a little beyond the dance, but it's interwoven of like, when are we going to shift as a whole? Sometimes I'm just like, when is it's going to show up?
Yeah, but I think the earth is an extension of ourselves. We have our own personal body, our own personal earth, and then we have the collective earth. And if people are not even in tune with their own personal earth, then they're not going to be in tune with the bigger collective earth. So I think that, again, dance, something that brings you back to your own body and the rhythm, literally the rhythm that you're dancing in, and then to get into the rhythm of the bigger cycles. And I just think, and I think it's important with children, because again, if you just start doing things and start normalizing things and you start bringing them back in, it becomes a part of their lives. I'm sure our ancestors all celebrated these things, but probably our mothers didn't. In the recent past, we didn't have that. I didn't have that. I mean, growing up, no one I know celebrated any of these things, but they celebrated Christmas, or they celebrated people's birthdays, or they said, there were specific celebrations, but they weren't these ones that were related to Earth and the cycles and the moon. And so I think all we have to do is just bring that back in. Let's just start doing it. And again, normalizing it. That's not really the word I want to use, but bringing it back into our consciousness by making it a part of our lives. Why not?
Yeah, and I think normalizing is a fine word. It's like letting ritual just be normal. Why not? And
Yeah.
my son went to Waldorf school for 10 years, and they do a really great job of honoring the rhythms and the cycles, and
Yeah.
in these different little, Advent spirals and these different traditions that were so sweet for them to be a part of. And they do these big plays with the dragon that comes in the fall, and that's kind of that. How are you going to slay that inner dragon? This time of year when the shadowy pieces are a little more in our faces, and what's going to be your sword? And so they had all this symbolism, and the symbolism as they're growing up and they're youngsters. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that style of school, but it's very sweet in that way.
No, it's beautiful. Yes. 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 And those things are really important, because those concepts of the dragon and being able to slay the dragon are important for our own mental state, our own inner peace. And again, working with those archetypes or fairy tales or whatever to understand that. I think that can be another way to help get us out of the mess that we're in and that disconnect to the inner world as well. It's not, I guess, just Mother Earth as the earth, the physical earth, but also our inner landscape. So anything that can bring us to that is a good thing.
Definitely. I've been working with the archetypes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book, The Fourfold Way by Angeles Arian. She talks about these four universal archetypes. She did a lot of research in indigenous cultures all over the world. I'm not sure how many years she spent researching, but it's the warrior, healer, visionary, and teacher as just, universal for all of us. And I've been really loving that. We worked with the warrior for the month of November in that same token of like, how are you going to find and honor and respect your needs, and if something's coming at you, a challenge, how do you respond? And through your body, through your dance, just giving people more tools. And right now we're working with the healer archetype, and that's been really great too, just acknowledging the arms of love. And I've really been interested in how can I expand, for my own personal practice, how can I expand my capacity to love? And with some women I've been working with, we were just talking about that of, sometimes you might be afraid to give because you're feeling tapped out, or you're feeling like you won't have enough. But I'm interested in supporting people in just feeling that capacity so big that you have to give, like it's just overflowing, it's coming out, and allowing ourselves this new way of thinking, a new way of being in the world where love is just coming through, and then you can share it however you do. There's a lot of farmers here growing food. That might be it. Teachers, I've been working a lot with school teachers. They have it's a very stressful time for school teachers, and the supporting them in this way has been really lovely, and just hearing their stories too.
Are they related to the elements, the humors, the archetypes?
Yeah,
Okay.
she has it lined up with the elements, the seasons.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's actually laid out so beautifully. She's very clear. She talks about their healing salves, like the healing salve of the warrior is dance. And she asks too, like, why did we stop telling stories? I actually wanted to have a storyteller, and maybe I still will at my event I was telling you about on the solstice, just to bring back the drumming, the storytelling, the dance. And and these, she also talks about silence being a healing salve.
Yes, that's beautiful. Well, I will find that book. You've you piqued my interest now. Yeah.
I love it. It's so good, and it's I've referenced it many times for different workshops and things, just to feel it. Like, let's awaken, like remind people you have an inner warrior, you have an inner healer. What does your visionary look like? We don't get taught that necessarily.
No, not at all. Yeah. I want to go back to something else that you said, because I'm curious what have you learned from nature? So you've done all this work with trekking and all of that and being in nature. What did that teach you in the sense of, like, what can you bring back from that into the dance?
Well, it's funny. I feel a book brewing actually on each element that relates to some personal stories and how that particular element showed up, and and have it be questioned too for everyone to think about. I would say I could speak to water a lot. I'm a water sign. I have a lot of watery energy, and I was a river guide and for a short time, and now I'm bringing it back in my life with my family. Like, I've gotten a couple permits, and we've gone down Hell's Canyon in Idaho. And when you're on the river taught me, make a decision and you stick with it. Because if you're going through a
ride the waves,
change your mind, you change your mind midway, it's not a good plan, and you might be going over, a place you don't want to go. So the opening myself to the elements, I think when I first was a river guide, I was 22 or something like that. And I had so many things coming at me, but also there were so many hours just sitting on the boat, reading the water, understanding the flow, and seeing how the dynamics with the rocks and the banks. And that's like such a start of the metaphor of how we can feel ourselves either in the flow or not, or swirling around an eddy and you're just like, why am I still here? Oh my gosh. Or getting trundled, even like the ocean, when you get trundled and you're surprised, because I don't go to the ocean very often, but when I do, and then and you're swimming, and then bam, you're upside down and you're having your own neti pot experience. Then you're like, oh yeah, power. My one ear does not like these little ear pods. Sorry.
They don't actually fit everybody.
Don't fit mine. So the power of water, the element of water, I just love it so much. And I'm so grateful that, we have a raft, and we're doing it now because it's like I can teach my son, and I can get back into that deep conversation. I feel like I have a conversation with water, and that, because I have it so deep with water, then I start to feel it more with fire and air, and I really feel it strongly with the earth element too. When I worked with at-risk youth in the wilderness setting, we did 19 and 20-day backpack trips. So it was a lot of just being, living out of a small backpack and walking for miles and looking for water. And if they didn't walk, then we didn't have water. Just real reality, basic things like, okay, now it's getting dark, we don't have camp set up, just all these survival things that just basic life skills that we take for granted when we have electricity and we have these fancy houses and all those things that, if you strip it away, like, how many of us would feel comfortable in that setting? I'm not sure. You can just ask ourselves, and how would we still feel grounded and connected? Would we be able to build a fire from nothing? Could we make a bow drill, and could we make a flint and steel fire? And I think it's the elements, they're in their power is such great healing tools. And I've designed a whole program, actually, and I can talk about it later, that connects us to the healing tools, elements as healing tools.
I love that phrase, understanding the flow, and the visual of just sitting and watching the water. I think that's amazing. Like if we did that, if we just sat and observed what was kind of passing by us, we would understand so much better how everything is going. I think we are, yeah, the powers of observation, I guess. Yeah. That's beautiful. That hit me, that phrase. So I I
Oh,
had to reiterate it. Yeah.
well, and there's other times, I mean, I had an experience this summer because I was in the front, and I have been down this river, but it changes. It's actually dam controlled. And I remember we jet boat up first, and I remember seeing this particular rapid and thinking, ooh, I'm not sure, this was risky. And there was a point where it was like so much unknown, right? Like, okay, it's a 6-foot drop. I think I'm in the right spot. There's a lot of variables, rocks, things. There's someone in the boat with me. And you just have this adrenaline, but then you have this whole force of like, yes. And there's this really sweet yes that happens with rafting. And I think there's a really sweet yes that happens with dancing. And I know you've had that.
Yes. No, I mean, recently I have not been in nature much, but before that, I was a person that spent a lot of time in nature and feel deeply connected to nature, but in a completely different way than what you're saying. That's why I'm curious about how I've never gone trekking, I've never gone camping, but my experiences with nature are more like with sitting with the plants, or that kind of interacting with nature in that way. So what you're saying to me now is just something completely different. So I'm really curious as to it seems like yours is the more active. I don't know, there's something different about it, and I'm just curious about what it taught you and what you brought back, which is what you've shared. But again, it's a very different experience than what I've had with nature. So that's curious to me because, yes, there's so much to learn there and in so many different ways.
So many, yeah, because you could bring in the animal world, and just relationships with wild animals when you're out there, and what that triggers in your system, and really being a person that has worked a lot on just really feeling my body and my instincts and what's transpiring. There's been moments, because I've traveled a lot and lived in Alaska too, and gone down rivers up there, where then you see a grizzly bear, or you see their tracks that are bigger than your friend's size 11 shoe, and you're like, okay, I am really low on the totem pole here.
On the food chain, yes.
On the food chain. And all the hair on the back of my head, on my neck is up, and it's up. And there was a time where I was a cook at a fishing lodge. This was way back, way before I did Nia, soul motion, any of that. And I would see 50 different grizzly bears in one day. That was my record for one day. And
Wow.
just to live in and amongst them, they weren't scared of us. They were in their awesome habitat, tons of salmon. They didn't even pay attention, but it still doesn't matter, because one little leap and one little swipe were nothing.
Yeah.
And just to feel that, like, okay, just the reverence for life, the reverence for their power, and just stepping down out of our little human ego and just being like, oh, wow. It just taught me a lot of that, of just being within this whole food chain dynamic and being real small.
It's a very humbling experience.
Very humbling, yes.
And I think that's part of the problem living in cities, that you being so disconnected to that. I think it is easy to get full of yourself and to see yourself as very important, because there isn't anything else competing with you, really. So, yes, just to be out in nature and to realize that things are a bit more precarious than you think they might be. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that part, when I created the name WildCore, it's like there's the wilderness within the wild, and that's where I'm sourcing from, is all this experience literally in the wild, and how I've taken that as metaphor, and then how that translates in the dance floor, and how it can help me be a gentle guide for folks that have different relationships with Mother Nature. We all have one, but they're, like you said, they're all different, and there's not one that's better than the other. It's just different. And just a reminder, allowing that portion every class, I am always reminding of our roots, our energetic roots. That's how we start every WildCore class.
Well, and I think, as you said, that wild essence is inside of all of us. Mm-hmm. But we just maybe don't know how to tap into it. And I'm sure being in nature and being in these situations calls you to rise to the occasion and to find that piece of yourself where you don't have to, maybe on a daily basis. So it's in there somewhere. No, I love the name. I never thought of it in that way, but that's beautiful. Yeah. So tell us a bit about what these up and coming programs. You said you're starting something new. So tell us about what's up and coming.
Yes, I have a program that begins in January. It's called Awaken Your Medicine Woman. And we spend 3 weeks with each element. We start with earth. So there's energy hygiene tools within videos, and there's 30-minute WildCore movement videos, one for each element. And then we meet every 3 weeks on Zoom or in person. Some people are in the program that live here and they want to meet in person, but if you don't, then you can come on Zoom. So it's a 16-week program. Sorry, my little ear just popped that out again. We just dive into the elements as healing tools. There's a lot of supportive aspects to it. There's a workbook. There's a little sacred healing bundle that I send everyone. And there's 2 spots left. So that's all on my website, Awaken Medicine Woman. And then in March, I am taking a group that's forming to Guatemala, Lake Atitlan. There is a retreat center that some friends of mine have created, and it's called Your Wild Beauty. It's a women's retreat. It's for a week, and that is also on my website. And we're going to work with our relationship with beauty. And yeah. I explain a lot of it in there, but I'm referencing from a book called Notes on the Need for Beauty. It really inspired me as about 13 years ago to feel into beauty as energy, and then work with the relationship of beauty just in our culture and how that has influenced, for me, energy leaks. And I was, been working on, no, I don't want that to be leaking in that way. So we're going to work a lot with that and have some fun. I have a guest teacher, my friend Titina Van Horn is going to be there as well. And then if anyone would like to join a Zoom class, my first one is free if you want to check it out. I teach that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8:30 to 9:30 Pacific Standard Time. So those are my little offerings.
And that's the Guatemala is the new, you said earlier, you're starting a new program.
Well,
that you would tell us about.
Awaken Medicine Woman is the one that starts in January.
Okay.
And it was brand new last year. So it's not super duper new. The super new one is the Guatemala retreat. Okay.
And do you do dance in these as well, or what?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And so WildCore, sorry, I'm circling back here. WildCore, you kind of described the class. So it's like it's a class that's in a session, or you're doing weekly classes, mm-hmm. or there's levels, or how exactly do you go through the program? Or is it a program? Maybe it's just a class.
It's just a class. The weekly is just a class where you can go and just connect in and be in the themes. We're in the healer archetype right now. We just started it last week, but you can join anytime. So each month I hold a strong theme, and that can just be a weekly practice to condition the body to step into a new form. And it doesn't have to, you can come and go as you want for the Zoom. And then the Awakened Medicine Woman, the one that starts in January, is a 16-week program, and then you complete it. I do have a WildCore teacher training program as well, and it begins in the fall of 2023. So
Okay.
It's not new either. There are 13 other WildCore teachers out there in the world.
And you can find all of that on the website, which is wildcoremovement.com. And you're also on Facebook at Untamed Nature and Instagram at WildCore Movement. All right. Anything else you'd like to share with us that maybe we didn't touch on?
Oh, yeah, there's probably a lot of things we didn't touch on, but I do feel really grateful that you asked me to be a part of this and to just be able to share WildCore in this way, and just some of the philosophy behind it and where it all came from. I think it's important for, I'm interested in that and other movement forms of how they develop. So I appreciate you, asking me these questions so I can share with people of, where is it based from? Where is the wild based from? Where is it sourced from? Are you just making all this up, or is it really something that you've experienced? I think that's good to know. If it's, if someone's called to this work, just where it sourced from. So I really appreciate being here and being able to share in that way.
Well, it's been interesting for me to talk to different people, because I feel that most people are heading towards the same destination, but going to it in so many different ways. So for me, it's really interesting to hear what everybody's doing and the different ways that people had the experience. Maybe you had a profound experience when you were in India, and somebody else had a profound experience some other way. But it does feel like we're sort of touched by something, that seed is planted within us somehow. But for each of us, it happens in a very different way. And even what comes out of it might be different. And to me, that's like different languages, people speaking different languages, but sort of saying the same thing. And I think it's interesting to sort of move through this and find that way. And I'm sure that for each person, there is a dance modality that really speaks to them, because yours is very different than some other person's. But again, it holds yet some elements that are very similar. So to me, that's really interesting to kind of find the things that are the same and the things that are different. And what might speak to you is different than what speaks to me, but it's still very similar. I don't know. I find this a very interesting subject to pursue, because I really think we're all kind of tapping into the same thing somehow, but in different ways. And it's interesting to listen to people's experiences.
I think so too. And I think that also is what just connects us all as well. It's that sense of we're all connected, and let's recognize that and keep our, like, the truth of how we want to express it or how we want to teach it. There's always going to be someone that's attracted to maybe WildCore that's not, it's like we all need everyone. There's no competition within all these different forms either. It's like it's these times, soulful times. It's like we need to have all these different ways that we recognize the importance of dance and the elements and connecting in. And this is my way. Some people are going to really jive with it. Others might not. And that's fine. That's beautiful. And one of the things that I like to teach my WildCore teachers is they're not learning my routines to teach. It's more of an accessing their inner WildCore and teaching from that place. And that's what people are going to be attracted to, is their WildCore. It's not my WildCore infused in them. You know what I mean? It's just more of a...
You're giving them the tools, and they have to use them in their own specific way. I think so. You have to create your own dance, in a sense. You can use elements from something, but in the end, it has to come through you, or it's not authentic.
It feels contrived, or it doesn't. You don't have that strong voice. You know, the just feeling the strength of your voice, and that's the empowerment that I like to support women in invoking in themselves if they want to teach. And yeah, it's just important for everything, really. I mean, then that carries over into other aspects of their life and how they are in their dance in the world.
So this is going to be a difficult question. How do you, I mean, it's not a difficult question. It's difficult for me to formulate the question. How do you feel that dance has changed your life, in the sense of what it might have brought you, or who you are that you wouldn't have been had it not been a part of your life? Because I think it does change us. And I think we've each had that profound experience which put us on our path. But I think it's interesting to think about what impact did it really have on us, and how it might have changed us.
Oh my gosh, I would be so different if I didn't dance, honestly. It would be, it's hard to really imagine, but what dance does for me, since I dance every day as a teacher, except for maybe the weekends, but it just depends. But what I feel is like all my cells are opening, all this push of expression coming through, that dynamic with music and being able to really tap into just the rhythms of music and sound, and appreciate musicians, appreciate all the different ways that my body can move. And I really feel athletic. And so when I take it to the ski hill or I go on a hike, I feel the benefits of dancing so much, because it accesses all parts of my being, not just my legs or, some of the linear sports that just go one direction, because we're moving around in all different directions and opening up all different hemispheres of our brain. And if I didn't dance, I think I would I'm not sure. I think I'd be sort of a mess, pretty messy.
Yes. I can relate to that. I'm actually asking you this question more for people who don't dance, because I think people who don't dance maybe don't realize how profound it is, and for me, I think I wouldn't have survived. Like, I wouldn't have survived my adolescence had I not danced. I mean, it was like my outlet, So this is kind of why I'm asking, because I don't think a lot of people realize how profound an effect it can have on your life. So maybe I should have asked that question in a different way. Started there.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear, from people who do dance, like how it really changed their lives, because I think it can really change your life. And I would hope that anybody who hasn't tried it would try it. And I guess that's really where that question is coming from, because I see it as very powerful medicine. And even if there are times in my life when I don't dance, there are times in my life where it's saved my life. So for me, it's extremely profound. And I think that there are a lot of people who have not had that experience. And I guess I'm trying to encourage people to try it, because I do think it is that profound. And whatever way whatever way speaks to you. This is one reason I want people to come on the show and talk about what they do, because I think there is a path for each person to experience this. And I hope that people will listen to different people and find the one that speaks to them and then try it, because I think that, I don't know, it's that important to me, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I can totally relate to that importance. And what the message I would want to say to everyone is it's not too late. Like, it's never too late to start dancing. And it also makes me think of some of the young girls and boys that I've taught. I had a children's program for about 10 years. And I also go into a little school, and you can just see that spirit of the dance coming through their little bodies. And at some point, when did we shut that down? As adults, as we got older, because I bet everyone at some point in their life as a little person, maybe especially, they felt that like, oh my God, and it could just look crazy. But I've seen little kids recently, in where I go to this kindergarten, where the little girl is just like completely possessed that day. And she's got this wild dance going on, and you're just like, all right, she is working some stuff out right now.
Exactly.
I love it. And not shutting that down. And then if you are an adult now and you're like, gosh, how do I get into it? You just start. You just find the modality like you're providing here. You find the modality that like really connects, or maybe even half connects, and try it and see how it goes.
Or just put music on and rock from side to side. To me, that's dancing as well. I think people think they have to be professionals. Mm-hmm. And I understand, coming back to what we were talking about earlier, I understand how people are inhibited, or they want the choreography because they don't know what to do and they don't want to just freestyle. Okay, I get that. But again, I think that's unfortunate. I think that's something that we have created because, as you said, this little girl is just going to go crazy and she doesn't care. But we have been taught to become self-conscious. And it doesn't have to be that. Like I said, just go in a dark room, put some music on, rock back and forth. To me, that's dancing as well. And it's going to be powerful. It's going to, even that very simple movement like that is going to be powerful. And I guess that's why I ask you about like what your movements are, or what kind of movements you're doing, because some things are very simple, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be self-conscious about what you're doing, or to have people describe what it is. And in your case, you're saying you're doing some free movement and you're doing some choreographed movement, and there's many different ways, but I think finding your way in is important, one way or another.
Yeah, I think so too, because if you take that little girl as an example of clearly something was moving through her, and what happens when that energy that needed to be expressed doesn't get expressed? It's, where did it go? And where did it get lodged somewhere? I'm also a massage therapist, so I can feel it in bodies when there's something that didn't get expressed. And there's so much to that. That would be like a whole other hour of conversing. But there's that piece of just allowing the energy to come through, whether it's just, my soul motion teacher is just all about shifting weight. Just start there with shifting weight, like you're saying. And the importance of allowing yourself to move your body in these different ways. And if you look at the fitness industry, or, you want to lift weights, or, get stronger, I'm a real proponent of just lifting your own body weight is enough, and having these creative ways of lifting your own body weight that allows yourself to be also expressive, and letting go of stress and shaking things out. I mean, if you're getting all of that in one class, to me, it's perfect medicine for me, and that could be perfect medicine for others, where you're wanting to get stronger and lifting weights is like dull, But what about doing it in your dance? Holding your arms up for a whole song is a lot.
Yes. Yes. And again, I think the ancients did this. They had their rituals, their festivals, and it was a time for people to let it out, to let go of whatever it was. Imagine if you just sort of had a free dance once a week and you just could shake it out or anything, just to release that regularly. I just think we'd be so much healthier mentally, especially, physically as well. But I think a lot of people do things to try to be physically fit. They jog or, whatever, do some kind of aerobic exercise. But there's still that whole other aspect of release that I think is more likely to happen. I don't know, maybe it happens with jogging. I'm not a jogger, but I think to intentionally try to kind of release it, and music is a good way to kind of ease it out. So I think some form of dance is really a good way to get rid of all those toxins, instead of, I don't know, going to a bar every weekend and having to get drunk because, you're going to press it all down again. Why not just let it out in some way and release it?
I totally agree.
That's my public service announcement. Shake it out instead of taking more toxins in.
Definitely.
Okay. Maybe we should wrap it up before we go too far. I'm going to put up your websites, how people can contact you. So wildcoremovement.com. And I think all your classes and everything are on your website?
Yep.
Okay, good.
And they
So
can
if you
always
want to-
just email me. My email is on there, and reach out. I'm easy to contact, not too busy.
And also on Facebook at Untamed Nature, and Instagram, WildCore Movement. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming and having this beautiful conversation and sharing your dance with us and all your experiences. I really appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie.
All
It's time
right.
for me to stoke my fire too, it looks like.
Yes, just a few embers there. All right, thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. All right. Well, that was, I've lost one of my monitors here, so I apologize. I'm at a disadvantage here. So let me just say what's happening in the future. As I mentioned, this will be the last episode for this year. I can't believe it's been a year. We started in January. And all the episodes are on YouTube as well as Anchor. So Anchor as a podcast, and it will give you links for all the different podcast platforms, Spotify, whatever podcast platform you're using. And we will, the next one will be in January 9th. And it's going to be a special event. So I will be keeping you posted as to what that will be, as well as the lineup for my guests for season 2. And if you can like and subscribe, that's always helpful. That helps other people find the podcast as well. And I guess that's it. I'm feeling a little nostalgic here. Having to wrap this up, I don't know. Anyway, so thank you for being here. And I hope to see you in the new year. And I hope that you have happy holidays, whatever holidays you're celebrating. And let's see what the new year brings us. All right. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.